Awesome. Love that. Great. Welcome everyone to the Lincolnville Selectmen's meeting. It is the 13th of September already. Oh boy, it'll be fall next time we all get together. Jordan, would you care to read the quote of the evening, please?
Sure. When buying and selling are controlled by legislation, the first things to be bought and sold are legislators. P.J. Award.
Thank you. At this point, I would like to open the podium for any non-agenda items. Seeing no one rushing up to the podium, let's move along to the administrator's report.
The only thing I have beyond the agenda, I have a couple things. One is we have a need for an executive session regarding a real estate matter that I'd like the board to hold at the end of, well, before you adjourn, but somewhere in there. There's a suggested motion on your workspaces. The other is later this week, we'll be replacing a couple of culverts across Duck Trap Road, and the road will be blocked off temporarily. We've been in touch with law enforcement, police, fire, school, and we'll keep them informed as we have to shut down the road. It'll be signed. Obviously, there'll be ways around. You'll be able to get to every location. It just might take you a little bit out of your way. So that probably will start on Wednesday, weather permitting. Outside of that, I think everything else is on the agenda.
Great. Would everyone be okay with making the executive session number 22 and adjournment 23?
Sure.
Great. Any questions for David under the administrator's report? All right, let's move along to upcoming meetings and announcements.
All meetings are here at the town office unless announced otherwise. The Wage and Personnel Policy Board meets Wednesday, September 15th, 5 p.m. Comprehensive Plan Review Committee scheduled to meet Wednesday, September 15th, 7 p.m. Broadband Committee scheduled to meet Thursday, September 16th, 5 p.m. Board of Assessors meets next Monday, September 20th, 6 p.m. And the Board of Selectmen meet next on Monday, September 27th, 6 p.m.
Thank you very much. Are there any upcoming community events anyone wishes to share? All right, seeing nothing, let's move along to the meeting minutes from the 23rd of August.
I move that the board approve the August 23rd, 2021 meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And moving rapidly along, we have a public hearing for a new liquor license for the Youngtown Inn. You have the application before you. I believe we have representatives from the Youngtown Inn here. Does the board have any discussion or questions or comments, or would they like to ask the applicants any questions?
No, not this
Okay.
time.
Thank you so much for popping in.
Yes.
And would anyone care to make a motion?
I move that the board open a public hearing concerning the liquor license application being sought by Camino LLC, doing business as the Youngtown Inn.
So moved?
Second.
Seconded. Discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And this is the opportunity for the public to come up and offer their input on the new application from the Youngtown Inn. Seeing no one rushing to the podium, I will entertain a motion.
I move the board close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you very much. After the public having had their opportunity, anything else coming up from the board? If nothing, I will entertain a motion.
I move that after having held a public hearing, that the board grant the liquor license requested by Camino LLC, doing business as the Youngtown Inn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much.
You're all set.
Welcome to the
Thank
community.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Excited.
And get back in touch with David for the
Yep.
signed copy.
You want us to mail it, drop it off, come back?
I'll come pick it
Okay, it'll be ready in the morning.
up.
Thank you.
And, moving along, David, would you care to give a bit of a preamble to this?
Sure. The town of Lincolnville has a general assistance ordinance, where we apply the ordinance to anybody applying for general assistance, which is, welfare to most people. The ordinance periodically gets reviewed and updated by the state of Maine and Maine Municipal Association to make sure it's current with, what's required or what's necessary. And you also have the appendices A through H, which outlines the maximums, and if we comply with the rules and regulations put forth by the state, then we get reimbursed for the majority of that money. And this is the ordinance that Kayla gets to apply, and Karen and I as deputies have to if she's not here.
Great. I will entertain a motion, please.
I move to open a public hearing concerning 2021 General Assistance Ordinance, including appendices A through H.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. The public hearing regarding the 2021 General Assistance Ordinance, including appendices A through H, is now open if anyone wishes to comment. Seeing no one rushing up to the podium, I will entertain a motion.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. If the board has no further conversation at this moment, I will entertain a motion.
I move that the board adopt the September 2021 General Assistance Ordinance as prepared by the Maine Municipal Association, along with appendices A through H, with an effective date of October 1st, 2021.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. I'm guessing you told Diane a later time.
I believe I told her the meeting started at 6 and we would very quickly move through the first couple of items, but.
Okay.
Up. We
Oh,
have a new Diane.
well, we have next on the agenda, from the Historical Society, we have a representative. All right, would you care to come to the podium and introduce yourself to the board and for the folks watching at home?
Oh gosh. My name is Christine Leary, and I'm coming here on behalf of Diane and
Okay,
the Lincolnville
great.
Historical Society, probably, and also the LIA. We understand that the process, we're coming about a section of Beach Road that is, we think, quite dangerous. And we understand that the process is for you guys to contact the DOT on our behalf after we make this request. So hopefully that's how it works. If you are standing in front of the schoolhouse and you're going toward the center, it's about, we walked it off, it's about 90 feet up Beach Road on your right. And there's a ravine where the creek's coming in. And you literally, if you were to park your car on that road, which many people do when the lot's full, I swear to you, if you opened the door and stepped out, you'd probably be in the ravine. It's not a big, long space, but it's definitely very, very dangerous. So just looking to get them to put in a guardrail or whatever, they'd have to come and look at it and decide.
Yeah.
So, my question is, say a guardrail was installed, however, decreased the on-street parking, would that still be something that you were in favor of?
You mean because the guardrail was
Mhm.
there, it would,
Yeah?
yeah, I think the safety has to really
Yeah.
supersede that because
Because maybe parking there in the first place probably is a little
it's
dangerous
not the
too.
best. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm the first to admit it, but people do it, and
Yeah.
I think it's just one of those better safe than sorry.
I was just curious, I
Yeah.
appreciate the answer, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so the general backstory for those watching or at home is because it's a state road, it's under the jurisdiction of the DOT, so it's not necessarily a call we can make, but we can perhaps have a general consensus to say, ask our town administrator to draft a letter to send to the DOT, saying that we're in support of this concept.
Has any of the select board viewed that? Or been down to take a look at it?
I did drive by this afternoon.
You did.
It's the same old spot.
Yeah.
That it always has been, yeah.
I will be honest, I have parked there and,
Did you follow?
well, it was just me,
Well,
but,
would it be cheaper to just install a do not park here sign?
well, again, I think
Because
because it's the jurisdiction of the DOT,
Yeah,
I think they
sorry.
really have to be brought in irregardless, regardless.
Yes.
Hello, long day. Regardless of the circumstances, I would want their eyes on it, and you know, and I think that this would just be, I mean, I would definitely feel comfortable saying, you know, there's concerns raised by one of the community organizations, and you know, we'd be in support of additional safety measures, however that looks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause I don't know, maybe it would be signage, maybe it would, who knows what they might suggest, I don't know,
Yeah.
David, what do you think?
Works for me. I think it'll work for the Historical Society and the LIA, and
Oh, I think
see what they-
absolutely. It's just, you know, as you all know, we would hope a don't park here sign would work, but
people ignore
sometimes for
signs.
myself, if it means walking a little further, I might ignore it. I don't know. Anyway, they'll look at it and do whatever's right for safety, so
Yeah, sure.
thank you.
Is there any language specifically the board would want to include in communication like that, or do you feel comfortable letting the town administrator draft the?
Yeah, I'm
I'm
comfortable.
comfortable with it.
Yeah, Mike?
I'm totally comfortable with it, though I would, maybe we might wanna include some sort of language asking the DOT if they could put in a guardrail and somehow try to discourage parking in front of the guardrail, simply just because it brings a car out right in the middle of the road, you know?
Yeah.
And it just brings, you know, so, I mean, we would be addressing one safety issue by maybe causing another one. So maybe we can ask the DOT if they can do both.
Hmm.
I don't know if they can.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they'd probably wanna take that into consideration for
And
sure.
and we may not want them to know that people park there, so I don't know if it's a good idea.
It may make it impossible also, so,
Yeah, I don't
yeah,
know, you know.
yeah. Great, well, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
coming and bringing
you.
this to our attention.
Sure.
Anything else on this topic?
No.
All right, thank
Thank
you so
you.
much for taking the time
Thank
to
you.
come in.
You're welcome,
you.
thank you.
And next before us, we have our annual review of the land lease for the float storage that, how many years now? 2, 3 years?
Monroe and Goodwin did it for 3, I believe, and then Lake City Floats last year was the
we bought it last year.
first year, and then now they're back for year 2.
And we have a representative from Lake City Floats. Does anyone have any questions?
I just have one. quick
Sure,
one.
would you come up to the podium and introduce yourself, please?
I'm
for-
Phoebe Winkelhofer. My husband and I own Lake City Floats, and we're hoping to store floats here again from Norton's Pond.
So, I think you guys do an awesome job, and I was just curious, do you know what the ratio of, like, public docks that are being stored on that land versus private ones?
So we only store the private ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Mike Devine does the public ones, right? Or his
Yep.
son-in-law or something. Right? Yeah.
Ed Hurlbert, Mike
Yeah.
Devine.
Right. So we don't do the town ones.
Okay. Then
So,
that
and
is
we
cool.
have just over 20 customers, but some have 2 pieces, some might have 6 pieces, so I don't know
Okay.
exactly the amount of pieces, but we stack ours like 5
Yeah.
high.
No, that's cool, that was just,
Yeah.
that was the only thing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
We've also allowed the boat club to store their floats on town property since they've been in existence.
Okay.
Okay.
I would like to see, I know we talked about this last year, the signage, because we've seen kids climbing on.
Yeah.
I would assume both town and the floats that use
Yeah.
store. I'd like to see some type of signage, just in case something
Right,
happens.
we did a sign last year and it got taken down,
Yeah,
and somebody, I don't know who, and then my husband went back up there. At this point, the ground was frozen and he couldn't get anything into the ground to redo a sign, so I was just talking about it before we left, and he said, if need be, we can like wrap it and somehow put a sign, put a rope around them or something to put a sign around it.
And
Whatever you guys would like, we're happy to do it.
yeah, and I'm sorry that got ripped down, I
Yeah,
have no
it's all
idea, but the other thing, there is a nature trail there, which also doubles as a snowmobile
Yeah.
trail. If we can make it as wide as possible.
Yeah.
you
How was
know,
it last year? Did you look? Because
It was close.
it was, okay,
Yeah, really close.
okay.
Now, I know the other thing, you just mentioned that you stack, but you only stack, you don't, stack different people's floats on different people's floats, you just,
Oh,
if
yes, we
somebody
do.
had 5 pieces,
Oh, no,
really?
oh, yeah. Yep. Have you seen,
I think I would like to have a conversation, or somehow we have a conversation with the boat club, because they put theirs individually, which creates less room for everybody.
it does, and I think the issue, is because we bring our backhoe up there and that's how we do it, and they don't have one. So,
Well, we could coordinate with them and
Yeah,
so
we
they
can-
don't
we can
improving
coordinate
their
with them.
system
Yeah.
perhaps.
Yep, absolutely.
I'm not gonna ask that they stack theirs, cause we're just so thankful to be able to
Oh,
use
I
that
know.
space.
But no,
But it would
but
make
I-
it a lot more space if they were able to stack them, because
Yeah.
putting them singly out takes a lot of
Yeah.
space.
But that's,
Okay.
we should revisit that
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah,
for
absolutely,
sure.
but
Yeah. Mike, you had
That's
a
great.
question or a comment?
And I know my husband said he was happy to, last year, he was happy to help them stack the town ones when we have the backhoe there.
Oh, great,
So that, that we're something to think about also.
great.
Yeah, thanks. I've been, drive by occasionally during the winter, and it's like, boy, that's really neat and tidy and all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah,
Works
thank
out
you.
good. Works out
Yeah.
good,
Yeah,
really
how,
good.
yeah, though I did, when I saw this was on the agenda, I reached out and talked to somebody from our Lakes and Ponds Committee, and they had a couple concerns from from the way it went down last year.
Sure.
And that has to do with, they've found too much unencapsulated styrofoam down on the ground when you
Mhm.
remove the floats.
Yep.
And they were hopeful that you'd be able to clean up after yourselves.
We did, we actually brought a dumpster up there even,
Yeah,
so
so
I
I-
apologize if that person felt
No.
that way, but my husband is
I-
super
no,
tidy
I-
and like doesn't really leave
So, yeah, I'm just
anything behind.
forwarding this on,
Yep.
And the other thing has to do with the Phragmites. We talked about this last year, all those nasty plants
Yes.
behind you,
Yep.
Right now, I don't know if you've been down there lately, but
I
they've got, in removing them, they've got a system to remove them where they cut them down, put them in piles, put tarps over them, let them compost, or dry up to nothingness.
Yep.
And anyway, though they're going to be leaving those for a couple months, maybe a month and a half. So if they're still there, when you guys get around to pulling
Mhm.
your floats and stacking them, they ask that you leave them there and not disturb them, because they want to make sure that they finish all the
Okay.
decomposition.
And are they in the parking,
No,
are they in that
they're way-
area?
They're way back.
So there's nothing that we would get near anyways?
I wouldn't think so. Maybe a
Okay.
backhoe or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, I can relay that message for sure. And, about the styrofoam, I would recommend putting an ordinance in for Lincolnville to get rid of that styrofoam and doing Camden has it, and it's
Mhm.
really silly that, so many of our
I
customers are on
understand,
McGonagall in Lincolnville,
Yeah.
and it's not there, and the styrofoam just goes right down to Barrett's Cove,
I
so
would-
it's,
I would think your job would be easier. You wouldn't have to do any cleanup if it's encapsulated,
Yeah.
right?
better for the environment, it's,
Of course, yeah.
I didn't realize we didn't have.
No, and a lot of our customers, I did have a conversation with Dave a few weeks ago, and a lot of our customers, we obviously encourage it.
Mhm.
And so a lot of them are doing it anyways in McGonagall
Yeah.
Lake that are in Lincolnville, like Fang Island and over, so, but it is something to think about.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the floats on Norton's Pond are not encapsulated.
Yeah,
And a lot of them are getting pretty old and
Sure.
we are
Yeah,
losing material.
Yeah, and the Lakes and Ponds Committee has been doing a really fantastic job
Indeed.
of being proactive in terms of disseminating information, and the percentage of unencapsulated
Yeah.
foam has been rapidly declining
Good.
as they've been doing these, we chose an educational approach.
Great. That's what Dave was saying. yeah.
And, yeah, and because the encapsulated billets are so much less expensive than the
Yeah.
exposed foam, people are naturally gravitating towards that
Good.
anyway.
Yeah.
But not to get distracted
Right.
from your lease that we're here to talk about.
I did have, finish up with one more thing.
Sure.
And that simply is that, the people in the Lakes and Pond Committee were kind of hoping that, those two concerns could be addressed within the contract. However, I was looking at the contract, and I'm no attorney, but I was looking at the contract, and it seems as if the language already does cover that.
Okay. To not touch those
Yeah.
things, the
It
plants?
doesn't mention the those plants,
Okay.
specifically. No, it does not.
Okay.
But it does, the contract does say you have to maintain and clean, in a clean and orderly condition, which means.
Yep. Right, and I would absolutely encourage anyone that has, that if they, sees anything down there, to please call us, because we are 2 miles or 5 miles away and happy to, to come up and help with anything that we can, so.
Sure.
I'd much rather come up there and clean up what somebody is upset about than have someone be upset and then affect it the next year, so. We're happy to come up and clean up anything that's left there if it's not cleaned up, so.
Well, that sounds good, I just want to pass that on, sure. And if you and Dave, when you do get around to signing the contract, if maybe Dave can include a note, just reminding
Yeah, I mean, this is,
about the fragmite.
what you have in your packet is last year's agreement,
Okay,
and if there are other things, signage, phragmites, anything else you want included,
well, it was up.
no time like the present.
It was up to me, I would include, not disturbing the phragmites in the contract. Because it's a sensitive issue if it gets out.
Yep.
That's just the wrong place for it, getting out into the pond. So if you guys can work that out, that'd be great. If that doesn't hinder your, your
I'm
business plan.
I am certain we have space and we can make that work.
Yeah, I would just, I'm unsure of where they leave them, and we do have to get in there with the backhoe, in all different positions,
yeah.
so as long,
Yeah, I mean, I would say, Mike, that this is a little bit of a mission creep conversation in
Understand,
that,
yeah.
like, I appreciate the fact that you're voicing some very pertinent concerns, but if the Lakes and Ponds Committee wants to have a conversation with the select board about shaping some very specific language, but I'm not arguing
Sure.
the value of adding it, but I think at the last minute, just throwing some language in without really being specific, and then also getting on the same page with the Lakes and Ponds about, this is a contract that these guys are going to execute and uphold, and so we kind of need to have the same thing from the Lakes and Ponds in terms of put the material here, it will be, there has to be a known quantity, so we can't include a known quantity in a contract that isn't necessarily being reciprocated from the other end. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense, yeah, and I don't know how, it seems to me kind of a daunting, if not impossible, task to get that kind of language, that kind of concern addressed in a contract.
Yeah,
And I would hate to.
yeah, but it's a great,
involved in
it's a good concern. I'm looking at it kind of from the other end, is that if the Lakes and Ponds Committee knows that these floats are going to be here annually, then we can find a workaround to make sure that the two aren't
Sure.
to be in conflict.
We might wanna ask them to stop by, to come by at one point.
Yeah,
And
if
talk
they
to us
have
about
concern
that.
about
Yeah.
placement and that kind of thing,
Sure.
sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that's all. Thanks a lot.
yeah, thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
Not to put you on the spot, Abby, but why not?
Dave, come on.
The swim float that the town has out in, not the ones attached to the shore, but the one that's.
Yeah, swim float, yeah.
Yeah. Approximately how much might that cost the town of Lincolnville to have that one brought into shore?
You mean for us to attach it to the boat and bring it to shore?
You got it.
What do you do right now?
Well, last year, a certain volunteer who remained nameless
Swam with it.
swam with it.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna make a joke.
And that person is getting a little older,
David.
and it's getting a little cooler out, and he hasn't done it yet.
Yeah, so, we're happy to do that for you, it's not a big deal, it's simple. Is there gonna be a time frame that it has to be done by and all that sort of stuff? I mean, can we
Before the ice
just-
sets
for the ice,
in.
Yeah, so it can be the type of thing that we can just do it when we pull the floats out and then put it back in when we put the floats back in, sort of thing?
Yeah, we might get it back in all right.
Okay.
Out is what I'm,
All right, so we'll take it out for you, and then you'll let me know in the spring if you want us to put it back in.
wow, wonderful,
good?
thank you.
And that is what you
Why
would
do you ask?
Yeah.
You could put it in your teeth and swim it
That's
back
what I
out.
had.
I would really like to, if you could do it one more time, David, I wanna watch.
The wind was blowing the right direction when I,
And you
Again,
just
I
want that, tied off to one of your floats that you have
Yeah.
in the town docks, okay.
I feel
Got
like
it.
this is a conversation we could have had, David, so that you're not
yeah, it was fun.
dolphining
It was
our
fun,
floats in and out.
once.
But that was fun to hear.
Should
All
be-
right, do we have any other questions regarding the lease?
How do you feel about what you pay? Are you comfortable with that, or?
Yeah, I
We had a
mean,
conversed about that last year.
we
I
did,
think it went up.
It
went up
did.
$100.
Do you feel like
Yep.
giving us more?
Not really. We put it off onto our customers, so I don't wanna have to charge them anymore.
So you don't feel like giving us more?
No.
Okay. That's what I thought.
We-
Hey,
We just
Exactly.
extracted a little bit more that's
Way to negotiate, Kurt.
worth quite a lot.
All right, would someone care to make a motion, please?
I move to authorize the town administrator to sign an agreement on behalf of the town that allows us to use, that allows us to use the use of town-owned property for float storage by Lake City Floats on essentially the same terms as last year.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you so much for coming in
Thank
and
you,
answering all of our
appreciate it.
questions.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
Thanks,
So
Ivy.
you'll just email that to me, I'll sign it, get it back.
I will do so.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And before we move off, a lot of great points have been brought up, and David did bring to our attention the events that happened in the winter time in the proximity of this space. And so, while it wasn't her responsibility to have that conversation, I do think, and the fact that you brought up the Lakes and Ponds Committee and their ongoing projects in that area, I think we should invite a representative from the Lawnmower Racing Association, is that their formal name? To come and have a proactive chat with us about whether they plan to hold events there at Norton Pond again, and just how we can be supportive and proactive in maybe partnering them with some of our other community parking areas in the neighborhood.
Well, I was curious about it because, I mean, look, I'm all for every fun event totally, but I also think it's awesome for everybody to be able to utilize the spaces that we have. So I
Right.
just, is that a permitted thing or just something that's done?
Well, and that's kind of the question,
Because
really.
I just wanna make sure, and I really don't want this to come across like I'm trying to kibosh anything. I just wanna make sure that, like, working people who get a few hours to go ice fishing on a day, get to go out and do that, even if there's an event going on. So I know, like I said, parking is at a premium. I just want, just like if someone rents the gazebo,
Yep,
we know that that's something, I just
yep,
don't
and I
want
think that's why we should
superseding other
invite,
people's right to, so
yeah,
that's
we
my-
should invite Aaron or a
We-
representative to kind of have that
Yeah.
conversation. Josh, yeah.
Can one of you explain to me what the event was last year? Because I know it was lawnmowers racing on Norton Pond. That's all I know.
I didn't attend, but I think David could speak to this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna back up just a little bit to some of Selectman Barnett Parker's concerns. A racing event in Lincolnville, we have a racing events ordinance which requires people wishing to do something like lawnmower races or the triathlons and that, or bike races or the lobster ride or anything like that. There's a big whopping $10 fee, and they have to get, it's basically a notification form. They get signed off by the ambulance service. law enforcement, and the Recreation Commission. It's really, do you have concerns? And if one of those three entities, they have the ability to approve, not approve, or acknowledge. And as long as they don't check the not approve, then it can move forward. If somebody checks off the not approve and the sponsors wish to have the event, then they can come to the select board and basically ask you to override their abilities. Sometimes those events take on lives of their own and become a little more popular than anybody at all ever anticipated they might. And hindsight being what it is, the next time that rolls around, people get a little more hesitant about checking the approve box or the acknowledge box and moving it on, because, to be honest, last year that event was very successful, and people were looking for activities to get outside, and there were cars just about everywhere, including parking on the lawn or the ice that was on, or the snow that was on top of the Veterans Park. You know, just not completely necessarily thinking about all the ramifications. It was just like, hey, I can park here, this space, and have at it. We alerted certainly the Recreation Commission last year after the events to say, you know, we got to keep this in mind for future, that it may need to be a little more organized in terms of parking, because as successful as it was this past winter, you know, everybody that puts on an event tries to make it even a little bit better the next year and the next year, and, you know,
Right.
sooner or later these things can get really big.
Right.
So that's out there. And so last year, I can't think of what the group's name is, the Thunder Valley Lawnmower Racing Association that does lawnmower racing at Union Fair and elsewhere. They sponsored an event down on the ice at Breezemere, and they had literally lawnmowers. You have to meet certain qualifications. I don't know if they had different classes or whatnot. But of racing, they plowed a track on Norton Pond, and out they went with the lawnmowers and drove them around really fast, and people are having a good time. And wouldn't necessarily be my cup of tea, but I don't have a riding lawnmower either. So, I haven't heard if there's any interest in coming back, but you might have seen they had signs up saying the next event was going to be at the Union Fairgrounds.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. So to that end, and it made me think of when Donnie Heel did fireworks and then came back and said, okay, I want to get buses and have off-site parking and have a plan to make it successful and safe.
Especially when one of the people putting it on has a parking lot and other things that could be utilized to, I mean.
So, you know, I have no idea if they have any interest in hosting an event like that again, but it couldn't hurt to invite them.
Sure.
And say, if they're like, oh yeah, absolutely, that was so much fun, tons of people came, then it would be nice to get the people who are in a position to maybe help facilitate that happen in a safe way, in the same room. So is everyone in agreement that that's a good idea to happen at some point before it's frozen?
Sure, yep.
All right, okay, super, thank you for indulging that additional conversation about that. Okay, so we have poll location permits from CMP. David, do you want to expand on that at all?
Sure. For new pole locations versus a replacement pole, if they're going to be located within the public right-of-way of a town road, the company wishing to place the pole has to seek authority from the Board of Selectmen. When we receive these, they get reviewed by the road commissioner, and the folks on the Conservation Commission, our tree stewards, to make sure well, tree stewards look to make sure there's no implications towards public shade trees, which are basically any tree within the right of way of the road. And the road commissioner looks to make sure that it's adequately sighted so that it doesn't interfere with vehicular traffic. You had before you 2 applications. The first is for a new pole on Youngtown Road that nobody, the road commissioner nor the Conservation Commission representative had any problems with the location. And so maybe we ought to deal with these individually.
Yes, for sure. And these are not to be lit, just poles.
Correct, these are just wooden utility poles upon
Yep.
which utilities are constructed.
Great. Would someone care to make a motion?
I move that the board approve and sign the location permit CMP job number 10300749199 for a new pole to be located adjacent to Youngtown Road.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you very much. And we have a second location.
The second location permit seeks to install 2 poles adjacent to Slab City Road. The first would be in line with the wires that currently exist. Someone's building a new house and they need power, and they have to have a pole to have the transformer put on it. There's no problem with that pole in terms of trees because they already do trimming alongside the wires to begin with. In order to adequately support that, though, they are looking to construct a stub pole on the opposite side of the road. So they'll run a guy wire from one pole from one side to the other and then down to the ground to provide a lateral support to that pole, or a counteracting force to the service that'll go into the house. They had proposed the stub pole to be located 10 feet from the traveled way. That put it right in the bottom of the ditch, which is a terrible spot for the pole because then, 2 sticks and 3 leaves become a dam and then the water erodes around it. We talked to Wayne Cookson from Central Maine Power, who's the field planner, about moving that pole an additional 2 feet back or out of the ditch, and he said there'd be absolutely no trouble with that if that's what the town wished to do, and that's what we'd wish to do.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Would someone care to make a motion?
I move the board approve and sign the location permit CMP job number 10300814523 for 2 new poles to be located adjacent to Slab City Road, provided that pole number 706 HS be located at least 12 feet from the edge of the road.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Further discussion.
And we don't wanna just specifically say not in the ditch, with the measurement that's sufficient enough.
12 feet actually gets it up out of the ditch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Gets it on the back slope of the
Right.
ditch, and
I trust that, I just want,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think,
I think that's sufficient.
All right,
okay.
let's do it.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And moving along, Mike, would you care to embark on our broadband committee update and its diverse presentation?
Yeah, sure, you got a couple things coming up but there's also just give, the RFP authorization and the continuation of the broadband committee charge. There's also just a general update I can give you first. What's been
Yeah,
happening.
please,
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
Well, as you know, our broadband committee has 1 meeting left before the charge ends. And our plans are to work on the final report due at that time, as well as all the reports that haven't gotten into us. And if it's continued, if the board decides to continue the charge, its plans are to hopefully participate in the selection of a consultant chosen to do the feasibility study as a result of that RFP, and to which we certainly invite anybody here on this board to participate in whatever selection process is chosen. And to participate, if we're, to participate as volunteers for the consultant if they ask such a thing. We're available for that, and also to discuss with the Board of Selectmen what it wants to do with the 20,000 that it received, that the town has received from the county. It's not earmarked for a specific use, but it's suggested, and we'd like to have a talk with you guys about that. And the last thing we want to do is do submit an application for a planning grant to the Iowa Institute concurrently. And there's a couple other things that came up. If you look at the minutes that I gave you, the draft minutes, a couple of other things that came up, but we've only got so much time. And, and it's stuff we'd like to do, which is like challenge. An important thing is to perhaps challenge the data that Maine Connect Authority has on what constitutes underserved and unserved addresses in Lincolnville. And, but we think that's probably best to be done in coordination with the feasibility study people to collect that data. And that's about it. And also, lastly, there's I got a hold of the Southwest Waldo Broadband Committee County and a newsletter, and just included it in the packet just so you guys can know what's going on around the county.
Great.
That's basically a general update on where we're at.
Questions for Mike on that overview? No one's jumping up and down, Mike, so if you want to move on to the RFP draft.
Sure,
that
yeah.
you
We all have a copy.
here.
We all have a copy of that. And what we did is we did a drafted language, and we submitted it to a town administrator and for his comments. And unfortunately, we had to do this all by email. And of course, things as they are. It's down to the last minute, of course. And but the way it looks, as far as I can see, is that David's comments some of them make a lot of sense, and we can easily incorporate those in and get it out. The things that he says are very easy to do with just a couple changes of language and deletions of a paragraph, and doing some other words, substituting some other words, as well as adding an appendix or different section, which includes the broadband charge. And other than that, I hope the board decides to proceed with it.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments for Mike on that?
I guess I'll start. I'm very happy with the RFP. I think I don't know if we want to dive into David's comments. I agree with them. I think we should. I don't think it's really important to have this paragraph where LCI charges $90 a month and then it goes on to talks about Spectrum. I think that can just be struck from it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's
Agreed.
necessary.
Yeah, I've got it.
I agree. Let's for number 2, having a more positive statement versus how it's written. I think that's a good change. I think the rest of the ones I agree with all the other ones. So, and I'm happy with the scope of work as long as we include the charges for the both iterations of the broadband committee to give the people issuing proposals some idea of what we've asked the committees to accomplish. So you get the combination of that with the scope of work should be plenty of information to get across what we're looking for.
I agree. I was just thinking of having the 2 charges that Dave suggested, we include simply as number 10 after the scope of work or something like that. Just to make it easy and tidy. But it seems to me that, I believe it's something that, David and a member, me or somebody else from the broadband committee could sit down and in 15 minutes get that final. And then get it out however David wants to get it out. You know, I don't know how he wants to do the RFP. You mail it, you email it, I don't know.
Yeah, sure, we can loop back to that once we get any additional board comments, if there are any. Kern, Jordan, anything else you wanna add?
No,
As of right now, I've got nothing. I'm still absorbing David's recommendations and just still looking it over.
Okay.
To be real honest with you. I'm not sure I'm ready to say, yeah, I'm ready to go with this.
Do you wanna see the next draft?
I do,
Okay,
I do.
well, that's an important detail. My question, and you just brought this up, cause I just heard this at the updated, big string attached to the, funds that are coming from the federal government, the relief funds, as they define underserved areas, and that there's a significant amount of pushback, from communities that have underserved areas, but they exceed that minimum that we struggled with, and then we decided to go with the 100. And so I want to ask the people who are in the active broadband conversation how we can adopt language in anything we move forward with that isn't going to put us in jeopardy for not having the option to utilize any of those funds, if that's what our
Well, sure, yeah.
town
Yeah,
decides.
2 things on that. Is one, the broadband committee talked last time with Kendra Jo Grindle about opportunities to quote-unquote challenge the data on the maps that a lot of the funding sources use. As you know, right now, Lincolnville is all blue because it looks like it's like everybody has high-speed internet. That information is provided to Connect Authority Maine by the ISPs. And individuals' homes are able to change that by doing 1 or 2 things. Doing speed tests, individuals doing speed tests, which are logged into their database, or formally challenging that in challenge rounds, I guess you could say. And there's one coming up on September 29th. I tend to think we can't challenge it well, make a good challenge, solid challenge in such a short amount of time.
Sure.
Though it might not hurt to get on board with something, a notice of some sort, just so we're in the mix, as it were. And the second thing is, I know that the board, a few months ago, or 6 months ago, said our stated goal is 100 symmetrical, 100 over 100.
Right.
To the home, to the living room, to the side.
Connected, yeah.
And I don't know, I personally, the board may want to revisit what that goal is, but I don't want to deviate from that. But if it's the case that funding options are changed because of what speed you have, I'm trusting the feasibility study, the scope of work says that, to come up with that information, give us that information.
Okay.
well, and those numbers are based on the performance of what people have right now, not what your goal is.
Yeah.
And even besides that, I mean, our goal, and we've already decided this, but is not to achieve the minimum of a federal bureau's standard, which is already 10 years out of whack.
Sure.
So really what we're trying to do is get the best thing that's possible technologically available now. And if we have underserved people, again, our goal won't change that fact. And the only thing that will help us, in fact, is getting a study that's independent of the ISP or of the town that can say, X number of people have this, X number of people have this, X number of people have nothing, and this is the total amount of houses that have connection, so I think we gotta start moving forward, so.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Josh.
So I think one thing we should all encourage the public to do, just hearing about how when you look at the official maps, Lincolnville is supposedly, everyone is connected with super fast internet, and we know that's not the case. And so I think the main broadband coalition is that they have a speed test that there's a map that shows you all the little dots of, I think, every single speed test people have done across the entire state. And the more that people in every town are taking these individual tests at home, the more data is out there, a more accurate data that's actually, realistic data, because they're the ones doing the test. So I think we should all encourage people take that test at home to help us help the town actually have an accurate picture. I would urge us to move forward with this tonight, and the reason is that things are moving so quickly. The price of fiber is becoming more expensive every month. Consultants are already slammed with doing feasibility studies for more and more towns, and the longer we wait, the more we're going to be behind in line. And I think the RFP is good how it is with these changes, and when we actually have proposals, we can be even more specific in terms of what we want and what works for us. So I think I don't want to wait any longer, because we really need to get more information, and the only way we're going to do that is with a study.
Well, I would agree with that. But I'd also point out that there's someplace in our RFP, there's language, David, you might want to tell me where it is, because it's in the town boilerplate language, that the terms of the contract is subject to negotiations. It's not, there is wiggle room, as it were, in the RFP, after it goes out.
Well, the RFP isn't
It's not a
a
contract.
signed contract by both parties.
That's
It's
right.
a starting point for negotiations.
Exactly.
Right.
Similar to a purchase agreement in a real estate transaction.
Yeah. So really the immediate question is, so I'm hearing that some board members want to just move forward with the generally agreed upon edits that have been put forth by our town administrator and other clarifications brought up here. Kern, you indicated that you would rather see the completed draft come back to the board so we can read it, see it in its entirety, and move forward.
And I don't wanna hold us up, I want to see the end result here, and I could be convinced to approve this with these changes, but these are a lot of changes, and I'd like to see it in its final form.
Well, Kurt, I had the opportunity this morning, when I wasn't on the roads looking at things, to incorporate all these changes that David suggested into a document. I decided not to do that because, I didn't want to give you something at the last minute, right? And but I just went through on my own and just crossed out things, added language that he suggested, and then it's like, man, it took me all 30 seconds. There's not much changes. I mean, they're right here. I'm looking at. They're not many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really semantic narrative language
It
that's
is,
being
and
removed
I
that has nothing to do
really,
with the content.
the committee worked hard on this. I really feel that to do editing of a word meaning by committee does that group a disservice. I kind of like to trust them on this.
am in the same boat as Kern in terms of, it has nothing to do with not trusting the broadband committee, and it has everything to do with just the difference in seeing a completed document in its entirety and being able to sit down and absorb it and, not make the presumption that there won't be something else that comes up that says, now that we've incorporated all of these changes, that it doesn't change the tenor or the implication or the tone or something else, and I wanna get this right, I guess. So that's my reservation, is that all of these edits came in very late in the game, and that's part of the reason why we have the deadlines, is because we have a couple of days to absorb all of this information. And so I get it, and the impulsive part of me wants to support just running with this, but I guess I have to stick to what in my gut feels right, is that I would rather see what we've discussed tonight incorporated into a document that I can have a full, proper couple days to I'm a visual person, and so that's that feels important to me. But
Well, I don't think the landscape's changing fast, and we're losing opportunities to work with consultants as time goes by, because there are more and more towns getting these things out.
Well, I'd like to make a motion, and we could see if that goes, and then we can discuss this further. I feel like, this that's what's going on, and there's room for that built into the process here. So I would like to, if we're gonna continue discussion, I would like to see first, I would like to make the motion, and if it's seconded, then we can further that discussion there that leads to something. I move that the broadband committee be authorized to seek proposals utilizing the current draft RFP and adjustments made by the town administrator.
Second.
moved and seconded. So further discussion, was there anything else that anyone on the board wished to incorporate in this before a motion was made? But we have a motion on the table. I guess I would like to throw out to the select board, how are we gonna pay for this?
That's a good question. So, as David said, it's a chicken and egg thing. He's familiar with what people who receive RFPs expect in terms of payment, or expect as. I don't know the best way to answer that. I know that we will be applying for a $15,000 grant. The county gave the town of Lincolnville $20,000, which they urged people to use for broadband, though they did not specify that.
And we have $5,000.
And there's
allocated for that as well.
$5,000 in the broadband committee. And in speaking with Kendra Jo Grindle, and she expects it to come from between 10 and 12 and maybe 15, depending
Okay.
upon which
Well,
Okay.
If I could also touch on.
Josh had his hand up.
Yeah, so I remember at least one consultant, it might have been Casco Bay Advisors, said that, that just as an example, that they would take $5,000 as the initial fee, and then what else did they say beyond that they could wait until the next town meeting, or?
Well, sorry, because this is exactly what I was going to. So there was it was a multi-pronged approach, so that they would help us in looking for a matched grant to help fund the study, and that the $5,000 would be good faith money showing that the town is interested, and then from that point on, they would work with us with the billing and seeing how that goes. So it's a very flexible approach. That's what we discerned during the interviews that we had with multiple contractors during the broadband committee meetings.
And Mark Roulette, who was here from Axiom a couple months ago, said pretty much the same thing too. I remember him saying that.
Okay. All right.
So on that same in that same vein, obviously administrators, I mean, any contracts coming back to you folks to approve and sign, we might want to ask within the RFP that a sample or draft contract be sent. I mean, we'd still end up having to negotiate, but at least we'd have something up front so that there would be some knowledge about how some of these more unique methods of payment or compensation could be understood. Because I think in all likelihood, what we've seen with past RFPs is you learn things from the various proposers, and this one is 80% of what you want. This one is 75%, but boy, we want to steal this 5 and negotiate with this to bring them up the rest of the way. And it might be helpful to have some of that language out there too.
Yeah. I
Because
totally
the-
support that.
You know, the board has, whatever contracts you sign, you need to have the ability to pay for. So just be forewarned, and because you can, well, you can sign a contract that obligates the town to more than the town's appropriated, but if you do, you might be personally end up on the hook. So I won't recommend that to you, but somewhere along the line, we've got to figure out what they need for compensation and then where the money's coming from. And whether it is a little bit of a chicken and egg. Sometimes we can define these scopes pretty well during budget time. Other times with this, I don't know as we have the knowledge and expertise necessarily to outline the complete scope, and we'll learn things from these, and we'll have to massage that. In the meantime, maybe something from some of these other funding sources become better known to us as well.
Well, and it could be that what comes back is that we don't have enough money at all. So there's many
Yep.
possibilities, but we won't find out any of them until we send this out.
Yep.
So,
And on the same token, it might come back and somebody might want to give us, the world for nothing.
I'll take that.
We'll aim for that.
Perhaps. One can hope, right? Not to put you on the spot. You're just looking contemplative.
No. I really would like to see it.
So, we have a motion and a second, but David did bring up a very good point in terms of including
Yeah.
that suggestion in the draft, which,
That's another line. That's not a deal breaker.
Well, look, I myself, I would, respect to David's point, I'd like to get this thing out sooner than later. Because all the reasons I stated, and Josh stated. But he's the RFP guy, who's had experience with that. I'd rather us all be comfortable sending it out with the proper language, and wait a couple weeks and take our chances with whatever happens in a couple weeks. So, much as I hate to say this, I'm gonna suggest we wait a couple weeks, but something's on the table, so I don't wanna take away from that.
yep, absolutely. Okay, so any more discussion on the motion that has been made right now?
Just one quickly,
Sure.
more of a question. If we sent out an RFP, selected someone, told them that us signing the agreement was contingent on, say, a special town meeting to appropriate the funds, we call a special town meeting, let's say it approves, and then we could sign the contract. That way we're not signing before we have the money, and we're being open and upfront about it as one way to pay for it. ARPA funds, I would assume it falls under the guidelines for infrastructure because it's planning for infrastructure. So right there, that's $140,000 or something this year that we'll have access to.
Maybe, but then, not to completely distract the conversation, we've got a big conversation to have about our list of not dissimilar, not that broadband is the same as pickleball, but, you know, I mean, we have to take all of the very necessary infrastructure, improvements, upgrades, overhauls, and you know, weigh them all, you know, we can't necessarily assume that the rescue funds are a foregone conclusion to all go towards broadband.
No, certainly not.
But,
Yeah.
I also don't wanna box us in if we get grants, and, you know, it may be that the contingencies of the grants are that we would have to have a special town meeting to get the authorization of our voters to move the funds anyway. But I also don't wanna box us into putting language in the RFP that may unintentionally exclude certain people from, like, they may look at that and say, well, they're, you know, I guess that's, again, yet another underlying reason why having the time to digest it and have follow-up conversations with David and the broadband committee to get the draft before the board and also the public to vote on it. And so, you know, so that's, I guess that's why I am an advocate for frustrating but slower approach to making the call. So that's where I'm coming from, but I agree with you that it's a worthy consideration. So, yeah.
Well, I've been frustrated before and disappointed before, so. I can live with it.
So you're signing willingly up for another round?
Well, no, I just hope others can be as well, but I tend to think, I'd like to get everybody in this room at least on the same page.
Sure. Yeah.
And but my warning is that I'm not so sure that we'll ever cover all of our bases, no matter if we include a contract in there or sample language, there's still gonna be questions.
Sure.
And at some point, we're gonna have to pull the trigger
Yeah,
with a bit of uncertainty.
Yeah.
No,
I really,
Understandable.
it feels like we're kicking this eternally, the can down the line, and I have to say, it's gone beyond frustration, and it seems like every time we have a discussion about this, there are reasons found for us to delay a decision, and before us, we have a draft where we're taking out minimal language and adjusting it, and it doesn't change really anything in the draft, and we do that with things all the time on the board and decisions, so I see the majority has changed, but it is disappointing to me that we continue to kick this down the line instead of taking it seriously and giving it the attention that it needs. It's months turning into now.
We did have a hand raised in the audience, and we're in the middle of a board discussion on a seconded motion, so we're not obligated to hear public comment, but given that we have a public member here,
Exactly.
is anyone opposed to inviting him up to address the board?
Not
Okay,
at all.
please come on up.
Hi, my name is Stephen Coltai, and I'm a resident of Lincolnville and a member of the Broadband Committee. Thank you very much for letting me speak. In terms of the larger context of our region here, just to provide a little more color, I'm also one of our representatives to the Mid-Coast Internet Consortium, which is now about 14 towns. To my knowledge, we are the only one of those 14 towns. There are no towns that are immediately adjacent to Lincolnville who are not much further down the road, if not almost already finished, with their feasibility studies. We have not yet agreed to even request proposals, which itself is a multi-week process, if not a multi-month process. Then there is the process of reviewing the submitted proposals and selecting someone. So in the most optimistic scenario, it seems to me, now that we're moving into the fourth quarter of the year, you're talking about a minimum of 3 months. We're probably now into the next year, 2022, before we would even begin work, assuming that we got somebody to want to work with us, given how much work there is now out there and how many towns. So Lincolnville, in all of Waldo County, and to my knowledge, all of Knox County, is the only town that has not even taken the decision to request a feasibility study proposal. And I just want to bring that to your attention because I think that's noteworthy. Second thing I want to say is, as somebody who has volunteered on the first and second broadband committee, speaking for myself purely personally, and there are lots of qualified people in town, I myself personally would not be prepared to continue working on the broadband committee if you decide tonight not to request a proposal. Obviously, everyone on the committee, and there are not many others who are present here tonight, but I'm sure that there will be many others in town who will be happy to move to Broadband Committee 3.0, which is what the new committee would be. But after having had 2 committees, and after having, in my own case, spent 100 volunteer hours on this issue, looking at where we are, I really believe that if you decide not to move forward, that sends a message to me personally as one citizen that this is not a priority for this body, and therefore not worth me at least spending any more time on. So I would just urge you to take into account where Lincolnville is in terms of where we stand with everyone else in the neighboring communities, how far behind we are. And when you do, if you do decide that you want to have a third broadband committee, which is a separate motion, I understand that you would have to consider separately if you even want to do that. But whether you do that or whether you decide that as a board of selectmen you will manage yourselves the RFP process, the negotiations with the consultant, the interactions with the consultant, and so forth, whichever way it goes, you will need some people, some human resources to help do that. And just to be very transparent, I've sort of reached my personal limit. So thank you for letting me speak.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to be very clear that I have no interest in not moving on an RFP. I'm simply, as a person tasked with making decisions that have long-term effects, and this is a very important thing to get right, I want to feel comfortable in my process. So that's, we have a process. It is unfortunate that the broadband committee was not able to get these edits into us
I agree,
sooner.
I agree.
It was a matter of a couple days, and an emergency on one party's behalf doesn't constitute one on mine, and I think it's worth 2 weeks to get it right. That's where I'm gonna leave it. So, any further discussion?
Yeah, and I think, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I want to get things right and to be exact, but I just feel like it's really like a veil that's being drawn over this as cover, again, for not moving forward, because built into the process, we're able to do everything that you want. And we ultimately have final call, and it's not like we're putting out something that we can do the things you want with moving forward, and I've said this with other things as well, and I think it's time to do that tonight, and I can appreciate what Stephen said, I understand it, and I think it would be a terrible loss in many ways for us not to move forward tonight, considering we can appease everyone on the select board within the process of doing what we're doing. Moving forward tonight does not negate what the two of you are bringing up. In fact, we're doing exactly that, and all that needs to be done is to look and see that, cross that language out, again, like we do with motions and other things at meetings all the time.
Josh, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so I want us to look at this as pros and cons, okay? To me, the downsides of passing this tonight, without looking at the final document with all these changes incorporated, the downsides of that to me are much less than the downsides of waiting even longer. I didn't quite realize what Stephen had said, and it's almost like really upsetting to think about we're that far behind in our two counties. Like, I don't know, like it really makes me sad that, like, are we gonna even be able to get someone to do a study for us anytime soon? Because they just might be too busy. And then, like, that puts us that much further behind builds and, you know, accomplishing what we want to accomplish. And okay, so this list of changes, there's 11 of them, okay? I just want to quickly run through them. First one is that the suggested changes from David, that each proposal submission package must include a single sealed fee statement, so we add that. And then number 2, changing that one sentence to a more positive statement, instead saying something like, the goal of the Lincolnville Board of Selectmen is for residents and businesses within the town of Lincolnville to have universal access to affordable, reliable, and fast internet. Number 3, striking the word improving, changing to affordable, reliable, and fast. Number 4, instead of saying that we're only served by Lincolnville Telephone Company, I would suggest say the vast majority of residents in Lincolnville are served by one ISP, because I think that's the case. Number 5, changing laid and inserting installed. Number 6, deleting roughly and inserting approximately. 7, 8, 9, and 10, we just strike that paragraph, so that takes care of that. And number 11, instead of saying expansion, we say any proposed, build or propose improvements. And my understanding, and then include the 2 charges from both versions of the committee. My understanding is that that's all we're talking about, those changes. And I guess I feel like waiting 2 weeks, I don't really see that as not being process oriented or not doing this properly. But waiting, again, kicks us further down the line of even asking for proposals. So I urge all 4 of you to really think about voting yes on this.
Well, as much as I would like, the ideal is to have everybody on board. And as much as I would like that, I really do think we've got to move forward on this, and I think they're pretty simple, as Josh explained, and as I've shown, it's very simple changes. So I'm going to vote yes on the proposal. I don't want to lose volunteers who are necessary to carry this ball forward, because eventually we're going to get to the point where this committee is expected to carry the ball forward. And it's not doing the town a service.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm happy to fall on my sword and say 99.99% of them. The fact that you guys don't have a finished document, or what you consider a finished document, is on me. Why? That doesn't change, I think, the need to get this out, though. And I'm sorry that we're not all together on this.
I would say that my request moving forward is that we get information in a more timely and complete fashion, because this conversation that we're embarking on is going to, as Stephen so articulately just shared with us, is both costly in terms of volunteer hours, our hours, staff hours, grants, etc. This is a weighty endeavor that we are embarking upon, and every single step of the way the first broadband committee was unable to complete their charge. The second broadband committee is in the midst of figuring it out. The select board, previous select boards, have not been supportive. There simply has been a complete misalignment of the timing of this engine in terms of it running well and moving forward.
I agree, I like the analysis.
And my reluctance and my hesitance has nothing to do with the conversation of broadband or access of our citizens and the need. It is about the fact that we are charged with a laundry list of responsibilities, replace broadband with anything else. And if we took the same approach to any of our other responsibilities that we're approaching this broadband conversation, this would be a rather poorly run town. And so it is entirely procedural and entirely looking towards the long-term, big picture, best interests of our citizens when I lean on the process. So that's where I'm coming from, and I do not want anyone to get the idea or imply that I'm being obstructionist to the concept. I am wedded to the process. That's it.
Yeah.
So that's entirely where I'm coming from. I am not arguing the merits of all of the work or the clarity that has been brought up by the discussion tonight. That's all. I feel like I've said enough on that particular statement. So unless anyone has any sort of new things to share, I think we probably beat this to exhaustion, and we can probably call a vote unless anyone else has anything more to share. Okay, so the motion is to move forward with the broadband committee to move forward with seeking proposals using the amended.
Yeah, yep, the amended proposal.
Okay.
And there is a copy that David has that has all of those, the encoded in red and blue changes and knows what to do.
Yep. So all those in favor? Those opposed? Thank you all very much for the robust conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so the second part of the conversation is the continuation of the charge of the broadband
Sure.
committee. Which I'm not sure much discussion needs to be had on that in terms of the value and need for that to happen.
Well, I just wanted to see if, float something that, instead of having this quick termination or short shelf life of these committees, is there a way that we can, extend the date or the functionality of the broadband committee to exist until we have achieved the voted and agreed upon goal of reaching every household in Lincolnville with 100 by 100? Because that's why the broadband committee is there, and the need for that isn't gonna go away just because 4 or 6 calendar months have passed, and I think it would save us a ton of logistical work and also unnecessary turnover within the committee itself. So it's just something I think it would kind of make it more consistent and easier for everyone involved.
Good points.
It certainly could, however, as, again, Stephen so clearly articulated, being that Lincolnville is so behind, I think part of the impetus from the first broadband committee charge in setting pretty clear deadlines was to keep the pace moving forward. And so in the next draft charge that will come to the board, I still want to see some context of deadlines. But I think that the broadband committee could be quite useful in helping articulate what a more realistic time frame might be.
Well,
And given that it is an ad hoc committee, I think those timelines are important and useful, if for nothing else than causing periodic check-ins.
well, I guess so. I think we're speaking of two separate things. So timelines and deadlines according to what the broadband committee is trying to accomplish is separate from what I proposed, which is the actual life of the committee be extended until we have achieved the goal, so that way we don't have to keep closing and reopening and doing it. That doesn't change the ability to change deadlines, apply deadlines, assign assignments, not to be redundant, but all those things that are already within the normal structure of the ad hoc committee. I'm just asking that we can add it and add a life to it that extends until we're done with the function of the broadband committee, which will end when we have achieved the goal that we agreed upon. So we'll still have all those timelines. You'll be able to propose and impose deadlines, and you'll be able to, I shouldn't be speaking in personal terms because we all act as one board, and we'll be able to have the broadband committee before us to adjust and be flexible without, like I said, I feel like it's a real hindrance to have to go through the continual process of kicking people off of a board and then asking them to rejoin, and stopping in between 2 weeks or 2 months, which really stops it. And
But all of that just, as you said, is it's.
That's not semantic.
It's having a conversation, that's all.
No,
I mean, how's that
disbanding a
bad?
committee and having to reorganize it is not a small something. I saw myself how it created months of delay in the work that was getting done. And I would
So-
like to think that as a board, I would just like to say this, that we have learned over the past 2 years and maybe adjust our own behavior to see that, again, we are not perhaps responding quickly enough to things that are going on. And if we're implementing things that are gonna hamstring us in our ability to process information or to move on something, I just don't think it's not positive, and I don't think it's productive. I just don't.
Well, yeah, good points, and, but the question right now, I think, what we're looking at is whether to extend, however, we want to extend,
Mm-hmm,
this committee.
mm-hmm.
I'd suggest that we do, because, if we do send an RFP out, I don't wanna be sitting up here as a select board trying to, make decisions.
We do all the time though.
And we
What's
do-
the problem? I don't.
And we do it well, as tonight is an example, yeah, no, we do it well, I agree. However, I would like,
I mean, I think that,
we've got other things to do, that's all
I mean,
I'm
I
saying.
think general concurrence that we would like the broadband to continue. And so asking the broadband committee to work with the town administrator to come up with a new proposed framework for a structure that will work.
Okay.
And
Sounds good.
take into the considerations of the things that have felt like hindrances
Mhm.
thus far.
Makes sense.
And let's make a plan to do something different, if that hasn't worked.
But in the meantime, the broadband committee will be dissolved.
Broadband committee, according to the initial charge, broadband committee has till the end of the month, with
Okay.
one more meeting.
Okay, I wasn't, okay.
We could, well, actually, we can get to the 30th, I think, with the 6 weeks.
Yep.
Or
And our
something.
next meeting is
two
on
more
the
meetings.
27th.
But this committee, this board here has one more meeting.
So assuming the broadband committee can in a timely fashion submit documents and have conversations with our town administrator to get that information into our packet so that on the 27th we can have a clear and definitive direction to move forward prior to the broadband committee actually dissolving, so that we'll just to use yet another mechanical metaphor to keep the flywheel
I think
turning.
they work great, I love the metaphors.
I don't know. Can you tell what I've been doing recently? So is that amenable, David? Is a general consensus adequate, or do you want that in the form of a motion?
I think I have that, and I suspect that the broadband committee chair has that, and
Okay,
that we'll work closely to get it back to the board
great.
timely fashion.
Fabulous. Anything more on this? Okay. Now, Midcoast whatever it's called now. The utility,
Yeah.
or the, yeah,
Well,
whatever offshoot we're part of.
when we meet, it's Mid-Coast Internet.
Okay,
But then the corporation is Mid-Coast Internet Development
Okay,
Corporation. But
great.
yeah, so well, we had a meeting, was it last week, week before?
Yes.
And not too much as it relates to Lincolnville has been going on. Rockport just applied for a grant from Knox County for a portion of their ARPA funds. And there was like a 50-page proposal. And so that's great. Rockport will be part of this phase one build out. That's the plan. I think at one point they weren't going to be, but
Right.
now they are.
okay,
And Telco is still, my understanding is they're still planning on building out in Camden, Rockland, Thomaston, maybe Owl's Head. And so they're a for-profit utility, and what they're quoting is fiber at a really high speed at a really fair price. And so that is one challenge with Mid-Coast Internet. In terms of trying to think if there's anything else about it that relates to Lincolnville. Jordan, is there anything I'm missing?
No, nope, just, as part and parcel of that, the Otelco discussion is just, what we're seeing on a broader state level is that ISP providers are, in essence, marking territory to prevent smaller towns, from being able to move forward with their old plans, which is also a reason why it's extremely important, to me moving forward, because there's a tactical war going on out there, and unfortunately, small towns like ours are not faring too well. So, that is part of the discussions that go on during every meeting, because it just seems, again, that companies are seeing that it is profitable, and it's and everyone has realized all at once how important fiber is, and they're all clamoring for it. So it's like piranhas in the water, and the smaller towns really need to protect themselves. That's what we've been talking about as well. So I don't know if that sounded accurate.
Well, I got a question for you, Jordan, but I don't know if it fits in. You mentioned last time you were going to talk with Peggy Schaefer.
I am
Bank-
still
is that-
waiting.
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
great. Any other updates there? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And prior to moving forward and acting on our next agenda item, I need a motion, please.
I move that we suspend our meeting as Board of Selectmen and that we convene as the Board of Assessors.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you very much. David, are you?
Yep, pinch hitting for assessor,
Great.
agent Zickler. Not really, because he did all the work and he had the memos. Taking these individually, the municipal valuation return is a 12-page document that's basically data that we required to share with Maine Revenue Services in order to get tree growth reimbursement, homestead reimbursement, blah, 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 blah. It's data. And he's prepared this all, talking about different, how we record keep and what we have for valuation and revals and all that stuff. And I'll try to answer questions more intelligently than what I just rattled off, if there are any.
So questions for David on the municipal valuation return?
I have none.
Seeing nothing, would someone care to make a motion?
I move that we approve and sign the 2021 municipal valuation return as prepared by the assessor's agent.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you all very much.
The next, you have 2 abatement requests that were initiated by the assessor's agent after conversations with the property owners. The first is abatement recommended is 2021-01 to Nathan and Elizabeth Neville for an error in land valuation that would reduce their assessed value by $29,700, which is $448.47 in tax.
Can I have a motion, please?
I move that the board grant abatement number 2021-01 to Nathan and Elizabeth Neville in the tax amount of $448.47 to correct an error in the land assessment.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor?
And the next is abatement number 2021-02 to James and Kathleen Andreoni. A value to be abated was $1,100, which is a tax amount of $16.61. There, at one point, was a shed on the property. The property got divided. The shed actually went on the neighbor's property, and then, believe it or not, the building was removed, but the taxes had remained on the Andreoni's property. And when they brought that to the attention of the assessor's agent, he said, yep, you're absolutely right, that's a mistake, and this abatement would correct that error.
Can I have a motion, please?
I move that the board grant abatement number 2021-02 to James and Kathleen Andreoni in the tax amount of $16.61 to correct an error in the building assessment.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you all very much.
And the final item is a tree growth withdrawal penalty commitment or supplemental assessment. Mike Kosowski and Jennifer Drawbridge wish to voluntarily withdraw part of their parcel from the tree growth program. There is a penalty commitment that goes with that in the amount of $3,740. That would be money coming in for taking something out of tree growth.
Great. Thank you. Can we have a motion, please?
I move that the board approve and sign the tree growth withdrawal penalty commitment regarding account number 1732 owned by Michael Kozowski and Jennifer Drawbridge in the tax amount of $3,740.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And having dispatched those items as the Board of Assessor prior to acting on the rest of our agenda, I need a motion, please.
No, go ahead, sir.
Go ahead.
I move that we adjourn our meeting as the Board of Assessors and reconvene as the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And it's hard to believe this much time has passed, but David, would you care to speak to the solar array purchase?
Sure. The town of Lincolnville is the beneficiaries of having a solar array at the fire station that powers municipal buildings. And we did that via a power purchase agreement with Revision Energy or Revision Investments LLC, I believe. And that gives us the option after a certain period of time that we can purchase the facility from them, which enhances our savings in the long term. Back in 2018, the Board of Selectmen put together a committee to look at the benefits and drawbacks to that purchase. In early 2019, the committee made a recommendation to the board that we purchase the solar array at the earliest possible moment because that maximizes the benefits long-term to the town. Since that time, we've been setting aside money for that purchase, which should be available to us at the first of the year. And I just thought it would be good perhaps to just revisit that to make sure the assumptions made a couple of years ago were still valid and things still look good. And there wasn't anything changed regulatory or operationally that would lead us down a bad path to spend $60,000+ to buy something, and we really wished we hadn't. And so I thought I'd bring that to the board's attention. I believe there are people that were on that committee before that would be happy to go back and revisit that just to make sure that the recommendations were valid, and just needed to know whether or not we thought that a good idea. I put together a charge. I've reached out to the former committee chair to just say, is this something you'd be willing to take on? And she said she would, and she thought others would be as well. So would probably tailor it just like we did on the last charge to say, you know, the members of the previous committee could be automatically appointed or come back to you, and then if there was anybody else in the public that wanted to participate, they could do like everybody else, fill out a community interest form and
Mhm.
be done. Just seemed like it was a good public policy to revisit everything before we pull the trigger next year.
Mhm. They did a great job before. Questions for David? Would anyone care to make a motion?
I move to have the town administrator prepare for the board's consideration a committee charge seeking to re-verify the recommendation to purchase the solar array as soon as it's available to the town.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I just want to say that at first I was unsure about how necessary this was, but the fact that they wanna put in the work anyways, I think that's great. Especially since they were if the members of the previous committee will serve on this, then they'll you know, they already have that expertise and that background. So sounds good.
Anything else? Okay, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And, Josh, do you wish to speak to the next agenda item regarding, the state's work on gender inclusive language and the ripple effects?
Sure. Yeah. So Representative Dudera sponsored LD 1522, which eliminates the references in state statute to selectmen and overseers of the poor. This is something that I had mentioned in the past that from a municipal level, that I thought would just be good policy to change our name from the Lincolnville Board of Selectmen to the Lincolnville Select Board, and all be select board members, like so many towns have done, seeing that it's the 21st century. But all that being said, it is now state law that the references in state statute have changed to members of the select board as well as board of overseers instead of overseers of the poor. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity for us to be in line with the state statute now and make this change, and be the, you know, Lincolnville Select Board and be select board members. And then overseers of the poor, change to board of overseers. I'm in favor of that too. I don't feel necessarily as strongly about that one, but it always felt a little strange to be overseers of, it just seemed unnecessary to have that kind of language. So I would be in favor of also changing it to the board of overseers. All right.
David, do you want to expand on the mechanics behind that a little bit?
I'll try. I believe that we should be, in the long term, consistent with state statute. That being said, the statute doesn't automatically change our ordinances and policies and town charter, and there's a fair amount of work. You know, we only have one town charter, but we have 30+ ordinances. We have probably that same number of policies and whatnot. So it's going to be a bit of a process, but if that's something the board wishes to pursue, we certainly can and should get going on it. In all likelihood, the charter amendments require a certain percentage of the voters to actually vote on. So we would probably look to present that a year from November when we have a gubernatorial election, and that way we'd be certain to have enough voters vote. Because
To not have to do it again.
again and again, you know, if you had called a special town meeting to vote on it and 50 people showed up, that's not going to be enough. If you had it in June, you might get enough.
So
And
it's a percentage of the registered voters in the town.
I think for the charter change, not having that in front of me, I think it's a percentage of the people that voted in the last gubernatorial election.
Okay.
That's why if you do it when you have a gubernatorial election, you qualify, because,
Yeah.
you know, there's no percentage, you'd be at 100 or 98, because some people just vote for governor, move on. But certainly, what I'd recommended is that if the board wants us to take that on, that we basically outline all the steps along the way that will need to be done. But the first step is to spend a little bit of my time, and a little bit more importantly, probably a little bit of the town attorney's time and our money, to make sure that you have the information necessary on the process to comply with the statute, if that makes any sense. We want, obviously, if you're amending the charter, there are very specific, the charter's like the constitution of the town, and there are very specific steps that need to be followed in terms of language availability, public hearings, and then the qualifications of the vote. None of it is particularly hard. It's just the steps to make sure we do it right, do it well, and get it done.
Well, I guess this is an interesting situation because there's a lot of different things going on, but my question is, maybe this is just a clarification issue, but where it is a law that's been signed in and it's effective, are we putting ourselves in the position as a town to vote whether or not we want to follow the law?
Now, the law that was changed were, bless you, all the references in state statute. Maine is a home rule state, where if the state doesn't prohibit you from doing it, you can do it. And the voters of the town of Lincolnville have established a town charter that says we have a board of selectmen, overseers of the poor, you know, da-da-da-da-da, and they also have adopted parking ordinances and land use ordinances and all of these things that, to be quite honest, the state doesn't care about.
Well, yeah, so.
And
this is
their
something-
action doesn't automatically change what we've done.
Well, yeah, so I understand that it doesn't change what we've done, but it definitely dictates what we're doing. So like, let's say hypothetically, we put this before a town vote and it's voted down with the percentages necessary. What then is the liability on the town because we're not following a statute? Or like you said, is that a state level statute that does not touch any local municipality at all?
Right, it doesn't directly, the state does not have the ability to change the charter of the town of Lincolnville.
What about penalize us if we don't?
I'm unaware of any financial penalties.
Well, that you could see where maybe it just
Yep.
gets murky because it's something that has been officially as a law established, and you know what I mean. And now we're deciding whether or not we want to follow.
I understand it when Selectman Garrettson brought it to my attention, and we included it in the last packet. As an aside on another conversation with the town attorney, I said, hey, by the way, you know, does this automatically just change all our stuff? Oh no, you still have to go through the same regulatory process you use to adopt these things has to be done, and nobody's going to come down, I presume nobody's gonna come down and say, thou shalt do this, you know what, government mandates get pushed back. But on the same token, in the long term, for the consistency of it, I think it's, you know, the appropriate thing to do is move forward with making consistency changes. It's just, it takes time. But every great journey starts with the first step.
Oh, that's fine. It just seemed like so many things intertwined in one area. I just was curious about that. If we, as a town, decided not to go along with a law,
Right.
what would
I
happen?
mean, if we didn't have a town charter, you probably could call yourself anything you wanted to, but we do.
And the law, in the end, at the end of every main log, there's a plain worded explanation of what the law does, and it's like one sentence, and it just changes the references in state statute to this, so.
Well, thank you.
Okay, anything else on this? Would someone care to make a motion?
I move that the town administrator work with the town attorney to outline the steps necessary to make the town charter, the town ordinances, and town policies to be consistent with state statute language and to be gender inclusive.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Who got the second, by
I
the
don't
way?
know.
He,
You make the
was
call.
he was slightly faster.
Okay.
Do we, oh, sorry.
Yep, no, discussion, we're in
Just if we
discussion.
wanted to add gender neutral and inclusive in that, just, instead of just gender inclusive.
Well, what is the LD?
Because it did, because in the language, it does say, it's like a, it's both gender neutral and inclusive.
I say we do whatever's in line with the state statute.
Yeah.
I think we get the spirit and intent.
Yeah,
And
Okay.
we'll get going.
okay.
Yeah. I think
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Great. And David, I think I'm gonna hand this one over to you with the, Rescue Act funds.
Sure, so more information is becoming available almost on a daily basis regarding the American Rescue Plan Act. And we, in essence, have a couple of tracks that we're following. One is the more procedural track to get us in line to accept the funds, and the other is how is the board going to determine how those funds are spent. So on the first track, or the procedural, we've received information from the state of Maine that all the other non-entitlement communities have received about how to access into their electronic portal to make the request. Fortunately, the portal only has 15 pages of instructions. But most of the things we have done and we are prepared to submit. There were a couple of things that are outstanding, one of which is to designate an authorized representative and contact person to act on behalf of the municipality. The second is to agree to the terms and conditions, which you have a copy in your packet. And the third is to agree to the assurances of compliance with the civil rights requirements, which are also enclosed. Those two, the terms and conditions lead you to all the other documents about how you can spend the money in the Civil Rights Act. We've done that in the past with some of our grant opportunities. It's nothing burdensome or overwhelming, but still the board as the governing body for this has to agree that we'll do it. So with that, I guess I just throw it back into your laps to ask questions about those things. And assuming you agree to the two documents and you designate an authorized representative, we'll get that all submitted via the portal and get in line for any additional information or a check.
Questions for David on this?
Seems pretty cut and dried to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think, all of those things make sense to direct our town administrator to be the point person on, so I will entertain a first motion, please.
I move the board designate David Kinney as the authorized representative and contact person to act on behalf of the town with respect to local fiscal recovery program and/or the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021.
So moved,
Second.
seconded, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you, and a second motion, please.
I move that the board agree to the award terms and conditions agreement and instruct the town administrator to sign the agreement as our authorized representative.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any further discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you very much, and a third motion, please.
I move that the board agree to the assurances of compliance with civil rights requirements and instruct the town administrator to sign the assurances as our authorized official.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And, we have, as has been mentioned, some funds from Waldo County. Do we have questions for the town administrator or in general on, the conditions that have been set forth by the county to accept those funds?
So my understanding is the terms and conditions are really the same as the ARPA funds coming to our town, which makes sense, of course, the same reporting requirements and spending limitations.
Yep.
So, okay.
Yeah, the only difference I see is it looks as though for non-entitlement communities, which Lincolnville is, versus the county, which is entitled, is the county has to do quarterly reporting. We're gonna have to likely do annual reporting, but $20,000, while it's big money if it was coming out of my own pocket, will probably, when that's expended, it will be relatively quickly and easily reported in 1 quarter or 2 quarters. It'd be done. We track all this on a daily basis, so it really isn't.
It's well within our
Yeah.
wheelhouse.
Yep.
Okay. Well, would someone care to make a motion then, please?
I move to authorize the town administrator to sign the acknowledgement of the receipt of $20,000 from Waldo County and to agree to the conditions set forth.
Second.
And seconded. Any discussion? Excuse me.
Bless
That
you.
sneeze was not a comment. So
Strike that
any
from the
discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And next is an update from David in our nearing the conclusion of a well issue here.
Yeah, so we've priced the replacement of a well due to salt contamination, and we've also priced the reverse osmosis system that would remove it from water within the existing well. The Maine DOT hydrogeologist does not prefer the recommended or the possible option of an osmosis system, basically due to long-term costs, and the homeowner would prefer a well as well. So that leaves us to, if the board concurs with that recommendation, how to pay for it. And we basically have couple options. One would be to have a special town meeting. The other would be basically out of the things we've saved, not spent money on public works. And that would be my recommendation at this point. And I guess I'll throw that over to you to ask if there's any questions or motions or whatever.
Yep.
Will we be putting this out for bid to see if there's more favorable options?
We
or-
put the well installation out to bid and got a grand total of no bidders.
Okay.
And then we twisted arms to get one here, who then told us he'd get back to us with a price and never did, and twisted more and twisted more and twisted more and got one. So
So this is the one and only.
this would be, if we're gonna get this in before snow flies, I think this is the best we're gonna do. And it is a unit price, so that if they strike water, 10 feet down, well, not 10, but,
Point taken.
Okay, so I know this isn't on the table, but I'd like to ask, how can we avoid having to spend the money in the future? Moving the well goes a long way towards that, of course.
Yep.
And, but what can we do?
Well, we've had conversations with our contractors that apply salt, in hopes to minimize that any further. The other, it just flew my mind.
Well, once we have concluded this particular, once we've satisfactorily resolved this particular
Oh, yeah.
issue, it, correct me if I'm off base at all, it will be an option for the board to have a conversation to get coverage for this with our insurance company.
Yeah, thank you. I
Gotcha.
knew that's where I was going with that conversation.
So, which I highly recommend we have that conversation once we
Insurance is a
resolve
wonderful
this
thing
issue.
sometimes, isn't
But,
it?
yeah, great question, Mike. Would anyone care to make a motion, please?
I move that the board authorize the town administrator to engage the services of Riley Well Drilling and any necessary auxiliary contractors for the replacement of the road salt contaminated well, and that funds for this work be the Public Works, Highways, and Bridges account.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And you have in your packet a draft of the remote meeting policy. Is there any questions or comments on that draft?
Yeah, I just wanted to,
Yes.
oh,
No,
go-
no, no,
no,
I'm ready, so.
I just wanted to get clear,
Yep.
David, the changes might be made to this after the public hearing. Is that the way it's been set up? Changes to.
Yeah, my understanding is that you can't adopt this without previously having a public hearing, so at some future date, whenever you want to do it, whenever you're satisfied with the language, we'd make this publicly available, just like it is today, publicly available. And then we'd open up at a future board meeting. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Throngs of the public would come, and then you'd listen, and if there were, you know, typos or something, you know, cross the T, you could make that type of change before adopting it. If it was a major or substantial change, the board might opt to hold another public hearing. I don't think it's required based on the statute. I think you're required to have a public, I know you're required to have a public hearing.
So if there's a revision that comes from the public, if the board decides to do this revision,
Yep.
we're not so sure if we'd have to take it back again for a public hearing.
No,
Okay,
correct.
so that's down the road.
Yeah, I would think if you were to do something substantial in your own minds,
Yeah.
you know, it's good public policy
Right, okay.
to say, let's do it again. If it were something, you know, again, a typo or a page number or something like that, you could just change it and move on.
Okay.
I don't know if, you know, things still seem to be trending in the wrong direction in terms of the pandemic winding down or getting over. But I don't really see us jumping to remote meetings, or I hope we don't, because it's hard along a lot of different ways.
Did you have a substantial change that you might suggest that we would want to look at another draft at a future meeting?
Yeah, actually, but I'm gonna wait for the public to get it,
Okay,
put their input.
okay, great.
That's one person.
I'm just curious, because
Oh, yeah.
I have one I want to throw out to the
Yeah, well,
group, right?
I got a big circle around something, so that I guess means, yeah,
Yeah,
substantial. Yeah.
I mean, does the board just want to go ahead with making a motion for the public hearing, or does the board want to throw out draft changes now?
I mean, I would like to hear all the ideas you all have, I mean,
Yeah.
while we're here.
Yeah.
You wanna go first with your?
Sure, yeah, in section 3, subsection 3C6, regarding for audio only teleconferencing, each speaker shall state their name before making remarks. I don't have an eloquent or good suggestion for how to improve this, just that I feel that based on our previous experience, if someone is going to be participating telephonically, there needs to be spelled out under section 6 a couple of bullet points of how that person's going to be recognized, or alternate meeting procedures if someone's going to be participating telephonically, so that comments are heard in order, so that there isn't just someone who's kind of chiming in strange ways. And I know it feels like nitpicking, but I could see in normal circumstances, it might be fine, but if there were a contentious or problematic conversation, that it could become challenging for everyone to be heard effectively. So just seeing that fleshed out and really just spelled out very specifically how someone would participate telephonically, other than just that they can. That was kind of a big thing that stuck out to me, so.
Well, I've got a couple things actually, but, and one of them is, it's not minor, but it's something that I don't see here, maybe it's because I'm not looking well, which is something, a follow-up on what you brought up last time, which is decorum. The expectation that that people who, if the public speaks or attends remotely, they are expected to follow the same guidelines that they, as if they were sitting in that chair. Maybe it's in here and I don't see it, but.
I don't think it is, and I think this policy is a little more, this seeks to comply with the law so that you can have
Yeah.
remote
Mm-hmm.
meetings. But even beyond this, I think you would have similar to what you had before, which was a little more nitty-gritty, you know, about decorum and raising your hand and whatever, you know, the other rules of the road that wouldn't require a public hearing and, you know, that. I think that we, in addition to the policy here, if and when this gets adopted, whether it's this version or something else, we're going to have to take that and go into your own rules of procedure that you adopt on an annual basis and say, are there conflicting things and how do we massage the language and tweak that to make it dovetail. This really was put together kind of as the tool that allows you to have them. Complies with the law, it gives the people the understanding that there will be the possibility of remote meetings versus, you know, how to get a Zoom link, you know, how to adjust the agenda, you know, the timeframes for all that.
Sure.
But it can be more specific or less specific if that's what you want.
I mean, there's some pretty specific things in here, so I think even if down the road, if tonight's not the night that we like add it in and have, you know, with the understanding that we're going to see future drafts that we're going to put our final stamp of approval on, I think as long as we keep these ideas percolating, I don't see the harm as long as we're not wandering outside of the state statute and what we have to adopt in order to just be able to act.
Sure.
I don't see a problem with specificity at all, so I think we
Mhm.
should keep it all in mind for
Sure,
sure.
yeah.
So in that light, Mike, did you have a couple other things?
Well, the other thing that, and it will be just, I'm not gonna, you know, advocate for it, but it will be percolating in my mind until public hearing. And that has to do with, we talked about it briefly last time, public remote participation. Is that a quote-unquote all-in thing, or is it just predicated on if a select person happens to be away and doing remotely? It's something I'll be interested in hearing what the public's input is on that. I don't think it's necessary to, you know, discuss that right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just so you know, the way this is drafted currently, we would only have, as Mike just pointed out, public participation in the meetings if we were gonna have at least one member of the board not being here. So we would have to establish how that, you know, technologically, I'm still trying to get a grip on how four of you are here and one of you gets a computer screen or, you know,
Right.
you know, it's, so the way this is set up right now is if the five of you are here, we wouldn't have, anybody remoting in unless they were somebody you invited, you know, a broadband consultant or the town attorney or somebody else that would cost us money to bring here. But that's
Okay.
just the way it's drafted currently.
Sure. Yeah.
Anything else you wanna bring up tonight
No.
specifically? Okay, yep, Jordan.
Well, so in talking about that specific, the wording about one member being absent in order for anyone really to be able to participate remotely, personally, I would like to see a complete hybrid model where anybody, regardless of what the medium is, could be involved in local government. I mean, so I feel like that's the most positive thing to come out of this. So I would personally like to see, if the selectmen can't be here, there's a way that they can remotely be here, and as many people from the town or whoever wants to take part in these meetings, because they are public meetings, that we use whatever is technologically at our disposal to make that happen. Personally, that's what I would like to see. I wouldn't mind being at a meeting where we have, something lights up and it says somebody would like to make a comment or bring something, and that way we can let people who have medical problems or older, who can't drive, not even pandemic related, just to really be able to get as many people involved as possible. But as far as wording in section 4, at the end of the paragraph, I don't know if it was a typo, it seems like it might have been, but it says to promote open and transparent government that maximizes the ability of all residents to participate in the public process. Remote or hybrid meetings, and this is what seems like a typo, should be the exception, not the norm. I would assume that they meant would be the norm, not the exception, because that would be doing exactly the opposite of what was stated in the preceding sentence.
I wrote that sentence.
Oh, okay.
And it's not a typo, because the feedback I've got from a lot of people is, I can't make my Zoom work, I can't get in, they won't let me talk, da-da-da, and yet the committee say, well, we want to meet remotely. Why? Well, because it's easy. Okay, but the public isn't complaining to the committees because they can't figure out how to do it. And they complain to me because they can reach me, and
I understand that. So I guess what I was thinking, that it was actually a positive, because we're not in the realm, thank goodness, yet, and I hope we won't be, where we have to have remote meetings. We're actually having these meetings, so people who are able to physically come still can. And I feel like all this is doing is adding the other group of people who, for whatever reasons, can't make it to the town office building to the meeting. So I would understand and agree if we were still in that mode where it was mandatory remote, and there's a huge section of the community that really can't attend because they don't have it. But I feel like, and I didn't mean to phrase that as a mistake.
No,
I just,
no, I understand what you-
but I hope it makes sense what I'm saying, because we are meeting, and everyone who normally would have the opportunity to come can. And by doing this, all we're doing is allowing other access to it. So that's how I feel.
Yeah, Josh.
So like David, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around how technologically we do hybrid. But there is a way to do it. I guess to me, the fact that there is a section 3, subsection A2, if I'm reading that right. To have that option means that we will have accomplished the technological aspect of how to do it.
Those hurdles have been crossed.
Yeah.
Financial and physical hurdles, yeah.
Yeah. And so if we already know how to do it, then I guess from the perspective of the public, it seems fair. It seems more fair to just always have the Zoom going when we have our meetings, regardless of if one of us is gone. That doesn't seem really like a fair trigger to the public whether or not they get to Zoom in or not. And it also just seems to be more consistent that it's an option that they can Zoom in. We encourage them to be here physically, but also as has been said, and as we all know, for a lot of people, they can't come in, or they just don't. They can't find the time, and Zooming in is a way for them to participate. And I think that really helps all of us do our job better. But we first have to figure out how to do that technologically in a way that isn't distracting you from your job, and that is fairly easy to set up and maintain. But before we go to a public hearing, I would like to see that incorporated in here, that we just always have a hybrid, whether or not we're all here or not, so the public can zoom in. I don't know how we're gonna do it yet, but I know there's a way.
Well, and this is just to get us in line with the state statute, right?
Yeah, well,
Like
I mean,
this first step,
Yeah,
so-
the idea of the three different types of meetings, obviously remote meetings, if we end up where we were a year ago, March, and we need to have something this remote, when everybody's remote, it's quote unquote relatively easy. If we do that with a member being remote for whatever reason, vacation, broken leg, whatever, and we're setting up a Zoom so you can participate, it's relatively easy to monitor. The challenges come when there's 5 of you here and we're taking notes, minutes, and somebody's, raising their hand electronically, and I'm not looking at a screen, if we had a nice person that was sitting here looking, monitoring, that might be easy as well, or easier. So there are some things that are, technologically, it's certainly doable. It's just how does it and who does it and when, that's, and at what cost that's gonna
Well,
drive us. I
and-
mean, we used to have a person that manned the cameras and the microphones way back in the day. And then we wanted to save ourselves $500 a year, and we eliminated that, and now we put it on a wide shot and a picture, and nobody seems to complain, but
Well, and
not quite as good.
so we can parse all of this stuff out down the road.
So you feel comfortable moving forward without a specific draft tonight, because we're gonna alter it down the line?
Yeah, I mean, we're not adopting the draft, we're having the motion is for a public hearing
Okay.
on the draft.
Yeah.
I'm
So-
very
But we will
comfortable.
see the draft before we'll make these changes before then, right? Before the public hearing, or we?
The public hearing would be at our next meeting, and then we would
Okay.
get input from the public, and then that can help further inform our
Okay.
discussion,
Right.
I think is the idea.
Yeah,
Awesome,
I'm hoping
thanks.
the public is going to give us some suggestions, perhaps that might help us technologically, or with volunteerism, man hours, those kinds of things. I think that's kind of what I'm hoping comes out of the public hearing, so we're not all trying to figure it out ourselves.
Karen, did you wanna throw in at all?
No.
Okay.
Certainly, if there's something that's annoying, egregious, or you just don't agree with, we ought to seek to change that before we send this out for a public hearing. I mean, that's kind of where I am. There's no sense in having a public hearing on something that people don't like to begin with.
So is there anything so egregious contained within this draft that we don't want to put it out to the public?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Okay.
I agree as well, yeah.
And for me, that's simply the hybrid meeting with no, number 3. And just have it either be 2 options, which is remote meetings of the Board of Selectmen, or hybrid meetings with remote participation, with, individual members of the board and the public.
Okay.
I agree too. I was kind of hoping to push this along and have the public give us their input, and then we might modify it. But if Dave, if you think it makes sense that major revisions be done before it gets to the public, that's what Josh says is a revision that I'd like to see, because the way you have number 3 reads now, it's what the state, requires or suggests. And that to me is just denying public access to a meeting. And as Josh says, I think we'd work better with more information.
Yeah,
And in that same token of feeling, that what I brought up about section 4, it's literally just switching those words would make me feel much better. Of it being the norm and not the exception. So that we're striving to give more access as a norm rather than taking it away.
Yeah,
Or
it opens up a can of worms,
So,
you know?
Yeah,
Just-
I know that.
just to ask the obvious question, we have, round numbers, 20 different committees. And so every meeting, if the committees so choose to want to meet remotely, every meeting they have, we're going to have someone manning a computer somewhere to get public comment, or to alert the broadband committee chair, or the planning board chair, or the whatever, that there's somebody that wants to have, and
Put a sound on it, like when we get messages from a cell phone, it could ping. I mean, we could figure that out. Again, I don't want to be a part of limiting public participation. That's it. I mean, I know we have a lot of committees, but we also have a lot of committees that need people on them. And I feel like the town, we need to foster participation. And one way to do that, even though, yes, it will create more work, is to make it more accessible. That's just how I feel.
Okay.
I know it's a lot of work, I know.
I understand that. I just want the board to know, I'm certainly not opposed to public participation in public meetings and accessibility. Just know that every avenue that increases accessibility increases your cost. And it's fine. We'll just figure out what that is and we'll pass that on to whoever pays the bill. And we'll set up a system that makes that happen. That's not a challenge. The only challenge is going to be when we present that cost to you. I just know that that's going to be, I mean,
yeah, we need to know what that dollar sign is associated with that decision. That has to be a known quantity before we just go and make that call. Yeah, Josh.
So I don't agree with that. I think that you gotta have a balance. And so to me, having this hybrid meetings for the Board of Selectmen makes sense to me because we're the top level of the government in the town. For committees, I think that would be overly burdensome for you. I think it would be overly expensive to have all of those be hybrid versus be all in person or remote. So I don't know if that means if we adopt this, if the town adopts this policy for the Board of Selectmen, that means all the committees have the option to as well, and we can't stop that. But for me, there is a balance. You can't, I mean, there is a cost, there is a time cost, and your time too, certainly, for setting up all of those meetings, because I know that took a lot of time. So, you know, for me, it's, for us, I see the hybrid model being really important for committees. I think in terms of balance, I would rather not push that. If we had a person that could just do all the Zoom meetings for free all the time, then yeah, I would say make it all hybrid, but we don't. And I don't really want to pay for that.
Yeah.
I agree 100% with that, Josh.
Yeah, well said.
I really do. That was well said. And remote or hybrid meetings should be the exception and not the norm, as it pertains to other boards, committees, and commissions.
Yeah, 100%.
so
I believe in that.
Yeah.
I believe in that.
Yeah.
right now, just for the board, right now, for every group or every board that wants to have a remote meeting, they'd have to adopt a policy at their meeting. There'd have to be a public vote to do that. This policy is set up so that they could adopt the same thing, in essence, by having a meeting and hearing from any public and then voting to do it, and then basically they can change, you know, Board of Selectmen to Planning Board just with this meeting to do it. So if you want something different than that, we ought to change section 4 before we have a public hearing. And that's kind of why I written the last line to promote
Yeah,
being an exception, not the norm.
I
So
think
maybe I ought to take another,
Section 4 should remain as it is, in my opinion.
to allow the committees to choose to have remote meetings.
As, I want it as you have written it.
The last part or the part,
Yes.
the early part.
Yes.
The early part is where the real meat of this is, which says they can do it by just having a hearing and taking a vote and passing the policy on to me as town clerk.
Mm-hmm. Again, I will say that we need to somehow, however impossible this feels, is to somehow quantify the financial implications of remote meetings. We can't just say we're just good, I mean, it was an exceptional circumstance that we found ourselves in, and we made it work, both financially and all of the logistics associated with that. And we are in a position where we can be thoughtful and responsible when it comes to these decisions.
Oh, I agree, yeah.
Yeah, David?
If you gaze into, as a board, you gaze into your crystal ball and don't see us, in the foreseeable future in the spot where we'll all be remote again, meaning this meeting, we being remote again, maybe we have to start some of the table this as is, start some of the legwork associated with the lights that light up or the screen that sits in the place of the selectman that's meeting, or how we would do the technological aspects of a hybrid meeting, and not adopt the policy at the moment, or not even go to a public hearing until we know some of these challenges. The thing that's problematic with that is if the you-know-what hits the fan,
Sure.
we're gonna be
We'll
meeting.
have to have a meeting.
Right, but we're gonna have you'll have to have a meeting.
But the truth is that previous boards have, extraordinary circumstances arise, and this board, I think, has it within itself to be able to, should an extraordinary circumstance arise, get together and make some sound decisions. But I would like to believe that we have the time and space to not act rashly here, and I am concerned about unintended consequences of passing this and things unraveling. And we're putting ourselves where we're spending money where we should be spending money somewhere else.
So, yeah, no, I'd much rather, as Dave said, as you said, figure out the technological and man hours involved in any of this, and the cost involved, before we move ahead with it. So we know. And I'm wondering, two questions. What monies or line items in the budget? Is there any line items in the budget which might cover the cost of, I don't know, whatever technology you need, or person you need to press the button?
I think that's part of the problem though, Mike, is there's too many whatevers associated with that,
Yeah, okay.
that line,
Yeah,
it's like,
sure.
we do have someone that we contract with for a very finite amount of money to do what is our known quantity of IT needs,
Yeah.
but we don't know if that person's available, we don't know if we need to purchase equipment, and
Right.
all of our equipment purchases are very tightly managed. I'm, just running through the budget in, my head, all of those lines don't have wiggle room
I see, okay. Well,
in
then-
them, and so we would need to we'd need to address the players at hand and the potential
Sure,
variables
yeah.
that may be at play.
I think after listening to the conversations and your discussion, I have a better understanding of what you'd like to try to accomplish, which is the ability to basically have hybrid meetings, whether any one of you is here or all of you are here. And I think we can take that information and start down the road of how do we accomplish that, and what's the what type of consequences there are in terms of equipment, in terms of hours, in terms of cost, and get a little more thorough breakdown of that so that you can make a more informed decision. The only question or concern I have is if something happens in the interim, which if we can address by being socially distanced around this room like we were at times, or meet in the parking lot and shoot the breeze and accomplish the business of the town, we can do it. So,
Yeah, Josh.
whoops.
So I just want to paint a rough picture of technologically how we could do it, just to give you some sense. The Waldo County Budget Committee last year, they had a hybrid approach to the budget committees where members of the budget committee went to the emergency management director's office, and they had something called an owl cam. And so it's a camera that swivels around depending on who's talking, and hooked up to a computer with someone managing that. So I'm imagining an owl cam hooked up to a computer where someone else is dealing with that during the meetings, and it's on the projector. So that's just one, to me, that's one way it could work. That's fairly simple instead of having, 5 different cameras and 6 computers.
Yep.
But that does mean a person here who's not one of us, ideally, managing that. I mean, it could be a high school intern.
Well, and then we'll have to expand that conversation to all of our boards, committees, commissions, and appointments, as well as does that also apply to staff members that interface with the public, et cetera. So we'll have, that's great. We should get that ball rolling and start to find the known quantities, and then start to apply that filter to the Rubik's Cube of how our town functions.
I think if we can figure it out for this group, we can transfer that technology to others relatively easily. But not to puff you up, you're the key cog, and this board makes it all go. And then the others will just have to, we can take something that works for this group and transfer it,
Okay.
to others.
Well,
So-
those groups have the ability to logistically find out what's best for them independent of what we're doing as well, as it's written here, so.
Yeah.
So are we in concurrence that we're gonna table this until we
No
have
more.
some better information?
That's good.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Again, excellent, robust conversation. So we have the Maine Municipal Association Annual Business Meeting and Voting Credentials. We can designate an official voting delegate and also designate an alternate delegate. I'm just gonna say, based on our last conversation about our unwillingness to weigh in on the business of what the MMA is doing, and given the relative short timeline of when they're going to be having this meeting, I certainly don't have the knowledge or background to weigh in at an annual meeting, but
I don't know if anybody's planning on attending or wishes to attend. I'm not planning, I'm trying to minimize some of my,
So, just curious if the board
Interactions
actually
with people.
wishes to designate anyone.
The only reason I would, no, I don't think we could make a,
To be a voting delegate.
yeah, I don't think we can be a delegate. I don't see how any of us can be responsible and get enough information in time to be, to make a vote. I mean, I think there are things at the meeting which could benefit the town,
Well, and certainly,
but that's totally different.
any board member could attend if they wanted to, correct?
yeah, if you wanna go, let us know and we'll register you and,
But just, based on the tenor of our conversation
Yeah.
thus far, voting on something seems.
What is even there to vote on at the meeting? It's unclear to me.
I don't know, I tried to look into that a little bit.
Good question.
at times I don't think they're proposing any this year, but at times in the past, they've had their bylaws, and they've had some changes or amendments to those types of things, how they're organized. It's, I don't wanna say it's perfunctory, but kind of is.
Adopting policies and procedures.
Well, it's important, but,
It is.
they, they do a good job of explaining what they do now, what they're looking to change and why, and then because it's a membership-driven organization, the members get to decide whether or not,
Yep.
they agree. And then that's how they do it.
Yep. Well, so if anybody wishes to participate, just get in touch with David and he'll hook you up.
Sounds good.
All right, moving along, we are now having the, long-awaited conversation regarding, launching David off into seeking a public facilities director. Does anyone have any questions for David? Does anyone wish to make a motion?
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
So reading this, this position, they would be acting as the harbor master as well.
As part of their duties, yep.
Okay,
Deputy,
deputy harbor master.
Deputy Harbor.
And who would be the harbor master?
probably me until you got real comfortable with the public facilities director, and then it would be public facilities director.
Okay. That was my only,
They're gonna need,
They'll need
this person's gonna be,
tutelage.
gonna have a lot of learning curve to do
big
and,
time.
Yep.
get up to speed, so.
Yep.
Okay, that's it.
Great, if someone wants to make a motion.
I move to authorize the town administrator to proceed with seeking candidates for the position of Public Facilities Director.
Second that.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And now time for selectmen updates on your various appointments to other committees and boards. Karen. Alrighty, Josh.
Nothing.
Mike.
I wanted to say something, but it's not about a committee.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
No.
And I also have nothing. So we'll move rapidly along. We have the treasurer and payroll warrants to approve and sign. Would someone care to make a motion?
I move the board approve the treasurer's and payroll warrants.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And we had something come up that will require the board to go into executive session to discuss the possible disposition of real property, where public conversation could prejudice the outcome of that. And so with a motion, we will enter into executive session, please.
I move the board enter into executive session pursuant to Title I MRSA, Section 4056C, to discuss the possible disposition of real property where premature disclosure of information would prejudice the competitive bargaining position of the town.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All right, thank you all very much.
That's all right.
Okay, so, as soon as the TV comes back on, there you go.
All right, we're back in public session, and if there is no more official business for the board to attend to, I will entertain final motion.
Well, I know everybody's perhaps anxious to get home. However, I wanted to say one real quick thing if I could.
Okay?
This is not an inappropriate time. Anyway, I was just reviewing, the video of the last meeting, and I looked at it, saw that I had said something very inappropriate, I thought. And I just wanted to issue an apology to anybody, committee members, because what I said was wrong. And I apologize, and I'm sorry I said it. There we go.
Alrighty.
I don't think it's necessary to rehash what I said, but I'm just gonna,
Sure. Would you care to make a final motion?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you very much.